At dinner, my wife casually said, "I think we should get a divorce after months of suspicious behavior." I smiled, knowing I'd already moved all our assets. Then I pulled out the papers showing exactly what she was actually going to walk away with, and her face went completely white. The silence that followed was deafening. She sat there staring at the legal documents I'd placed on the table, her fork still halfway to her mouth with pasta dangling from it. For weeks, I'd been watching her orchestrate what she thought was the perfect financial ambush, but she had no idea I'd been 3 moves ahead the entire time. The shock in her eyes was almost worth the months of sleepless nights I'd endured, wondering if I was losing my mind, or if my wife of 4 years was really planning to destroy me. My hands were surprisingly steady as I watched her process what she was seeing. These weren't divorce papers. They were asset transfer documents showing that everything she'd been counting on taking was already gone, legally and irrevocably moved beyond her reach. The house, the savings, the investment accounts, even the cars, all transferred into an unbreakable trust under my mother's name 2 weeks before she'd planned to file. The timing was perfect, and more importantly, completely legal. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. But I could see in her face that she already knew exactly what it was. This was the moment when her carefully planned strategy collapsed, and she realized that the man she'd been manipulating for months had been quietly dismantling her entire scheme while she thought she was being clever. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of wine, letting the moment breathe. For the first time in months, I felt completely in control. "It's exactly what it looks like, Emma. It's me protecting myself from what you've been planning." The strategic part of my brain, the part that had built a successful consulting firm from nothing, was finally able to operate without the emotional chaos she'd been creating. And that strategic mind had been very, very busy. You see, what Emma didn't know was that my background in corporate restructuring had taught me to recognize patterns of deception and financial manipulation long before most people would even suspect something was wrong. I'd spent 15 years helping companies identify internal threats, restructure assets to prevent hostile takeovers, and protect valuable resources from bad actors. I'd literally written the playbook on detecting and countering financial betrayal in professional settings, and my own wife had been foolish enough to try running those same plays against me. My consulting firm, Strategic Asset Protection, had annual revenues of over $2 million, with clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to high net worth individuals facing exactly these kinds of threats. I'd helped dozens of business owners protect their assets from partners planning to steal everything, and I specialized in creating unbreakable legal structures that could withstand any challenge. Emma had picked the wrong target for her little scheme. The financial position I'd built over 15 years of careful planning was substantial enough to weather any storm. My personal net worth exceeded $3 million, with diversified investments, multiple revenue streams, and most importantly, legal structures that I'd spent years perfecting. The house alone was worth $850,000, completely paid off. My retirement accounts held over $900,000, and I had another $600,000 in liquid investments that could be moved at a moment's notice. Emma had been counting on taking half of everything, but she'd underestimated both my resources and my expertise. But money was just one advantage. My professional network included some of the best attorneys, forensic accountants, and private investigators in the state. These weren't just business cards I'd collected at networking events. These were people I'd worked with for years, who owed me favors, and who understood exactly how to handle situations like this. When you've helped someone save their company from a hostile takeover, they remember. When you've protected someone's family business from a dishonest partner, they take your calls immediately. More importantly, I had something Emma couldn't fake or replicate: credibility. 15 years of successfully protecting other people's assets had taught me exactly how these schemes unfold, what mistakes people make, and how to stay 10 steps ahead of someone trying to manipulate the system. Emma was operating from an emotional playbook she'd probably found on some divorce forum. I was operating from 15 years of professional experience in exactly this kind of financial warfare. The documentation I'd been quietly gathering for months was extensive and methodical. Every suspicious phone call she'd made was logged with timestamps. Every unusual financial transaction was tracked and categorized. Every lie she'd told was documented with evidence. I'd been building an airtight case while she thought I was obliviously going about my daily routine. She'd been playing checkers while I was playing chess at a grandmaster level. Even my timing had been strategic. The asset transfers happened during a period when she was acting completely normal, even affectionate. There was no way she could claim I'd done it in response to any threat or marital discord. As far as any court would be concerned, I'd simply been engaging in routine estate planning with my mother, something wealthy families do all the time. The trust I'd created was identical to structures I'd built for clients worth 10 times what I had. Emma was still staring at the papers, flipping through pages of legal documents that represented the complete collapse of whatever plan she'd been hatching. Finally, she looked up at me with a mixture of rage and desperation that I'd never seen before. "You can't do this. This is our money, our house. You can't just steal everything we built together." I almost laughed. "Steal? Emma, I protected assets that I earned from being stolen. There's a difference." I pulled out my phone and showed her a recording app that had been running throughout dinner. "The same way I've been protecting myself from whatever you and Jake have been planning for the past 3 months. The color drained from her face when I mentioned Jake's name. She hadn't expected me to know about her affair, let alone the fact that her new boyfriend had been coaching her through what they thought would be a lucrative divorce. But that's what happens when you underestimate someone whose job is to detect exactly these kinds of schemes. My first strategic consultation had been with Patricia Brennan, the attorney who'd handled my business incorporation and several complex client cases. Patricia specialized in high-asset divorces and had seen every variation of financial manipulation tactics. When I'd called her 6 weeks earlier with my suspicions, she'd immediately recognized the pattern and walked me through exactly how to protect myself. "The key," Patricia had explained during our 3-hour strategy session, "is that everything you do has to be legitimate and defensible. You're not hiding assets, you're restructuring them for legitimate estate planning purposes. The timing has to be perfect, and the documentation has to be flawless." She'd then connected me with the estate planning attorney who'd created similar structures for Fortune 500 executives, ensuring everything would withstand any challenge. My second consultation was with Marcus Hoffman, a forensic accountant who'd worked on several of my client cases. Marcus had spent 2 weeks analyzing our financial records and identifying exactly what Emma had been doing. The small withdrawals, the subtle account changes, the way she'd been gathering information about our assets. It all pointed to someone preparing for a major financial strike. Marcus had helped me understand not just what she was planning, but how to counter it completely. "She's following a very predictable pattern," Marcus had told me. "Someone's coaching her, probably showing her exactly how to maximize her take in the divorce. But they're assuming you're a passive target who won't see it coming. That's their mistake." His analysis had revealed that Emma was expecting to walk away with at least $1 million, enough to start a new life with Jake while leaving me financially devastated. The third crucial consultation was with David Foster, a private investigator who specialized in domestic cases. David's surveillance had confirmed the affair and revealed just how deep the planning went. Emma and Jake weren't just sleeping together. They were actively strategizing about my assets, discussing timelines for the divorce, and even looking at properties they planned to buy with my money. David's evidence was comprehensive and would make any court case a slam dunk. "Your wife isn't just cheating," David had reported after 2 weeks of surveillance. "She's conducting what amounts to a financial intelligence operation against you. Jake appears to be someone who's done this before, possibly targeting other high-net-worth individuals. This isn't passion, it's a business plan." That information had changed everything, transforming this from a personal betrayal into a clear financial crime that needed to be stopped. The asset protection strategy I'd implemented was sophisticated but entirely legal. Working with the estate planning firm of Hamilton and Associates, I'd created an irrevocable trust that served legitimate purposes while making the assets unreachable in any divorce proceeding. My mother, who'd been appalled when I'd explained what Emma was planning, had readily agreed to be the trustee. The trust was structured to benefit her during her lifetime, then revert to me after her death, making it legally unassailable. Every transfer had been documented with proper legal justification. The house transfer was positioned as part of a multi-generational estate plan to minimize future tax liability. The investment transfers were framed as protecting assets from my mother's long-term care needs. The business assets were restructured to protect them from any potential liability issues. Emma's attorney would have no grounds to challenge any of it because everything served legitimate, documented purposes beyond just divorce protection. The timing had been crucial and required careful orchestration. I'd needed to complete all transfers during a period when Emma was behaving normally, giving her no grounds to claim I'd acted in response to marital problems. For 3 weeks, I'd maintained perfect normalcy at home, while systematically moving assets beyond her reach. Every evening, I'd come home, kiss her hello, and ask about her day, all while knowing she was actively planning to destroy me financially. Now, watching her face as she realized the scope of what I'd done, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because I had successfully protected myself from someone who'd been planning to rob me blind. Sadness because the woman I'd loved and trusted had turned out to be someone capable of such calculated betrayal. But the strategic part of my mind was already moving forward, anticipating her next moves and preparing counter-strategies. Emma set the papers down with shaking hands and looked at me with undisguised fury. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won?" Her voice was rising, the careful mask she'd been wearing for months finally slipping completely. "I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." I remained calm, pulling out a tablet and showing her the comprehensive evidence David had gathered. Photos of her and Jake together, recordings of their conversations about my assets, financial records showing her suspicious transactions, even screenshots of text messages where they'd discussed their timeline for the divorce. "You're welcome to try, Emma, but I'm afraid court isn't going to go the way you're expecting." The evidence was overwhelming and would make any legal challenge futile. Emma's own words, recorded during her conversations with Jake, would demonstrate clear premeditation and financial manipulation. The suspicious transactions she'd made would show a pattern of deception. Most damaging of all, her affair would eliminate any claim to spousal support while making her attempt to take my assets look like exactly what it was: theft. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and I watched her face go even paler as she read it. I suspected it was Jake, probably wondering why she hadn't called with news of her successful divorce ambush. But instead of a celebration, she was sitting across from evidence of her complete defeat, orchestrated by someone she'd severely underestimated. The consequences began manifesting immediately, even before Emma had fully processed what had happened. Her first call was to the attorney she'd secretly retained, a conversation I couldn't hear, but whose outcome was written all over her face. When she hung up, she looked defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "My lawyer says the transfers are legal. He says there's nothing I can do to challenge them." The second wave of consequences hit, when her family learned what had really been happening. Emma's parents, who had always trusted my judgment in financial matters, were horrified to discover their daughter had been planning such an elaborate deception. Her sister, who worked in banking and understood exactly what Emma had been attempting, immediately distanced herself from the situation. Emma's own family began treating her like a stranger once they realized the extent of her betrayal. Jake disappeared completely once word got out about the evidence we'd gathered. Whatever his long-term plan had been, it definitely hadn't included being exposed as someone who coached married women through elaborate financial schemes against their husbands. David's investigation revealed that Emma wasn't Jake's first target, just his most recent one. When Emma tried to contact him after the dinner confrontation, she discovered he'd blocked her on everything and seemingly vanished from her life entirely. The professional consequences for Emma were severe and immediate. Once news of her behavior spread through our social circle, she found herself completely isolated. The affair was damaging enough, but the calculated financial manipulation attempt destroyed any sympathy she might have received. Mutual friends who might have supported her through a regular divorce were appalled by the evidence of premeditated deception and began actively avoiding her. Emma's workplace became difficult once word spread about her personal conduct. While they couldn't fire her for personal issues, the stigma of being known as someone who'd attempted elaborate financial fraud against her own husband made her professional relationships awkward and strained. Several clients specifically requested different account managers, and her advancement prospects evaporated overnight. The final legal resolution came 6 months later, with Emma receiving only her personal belongings and a small settlement equivalent to what she'd contributed to our joint accounts during the marriage. The evidence of her deception and affair eliminated any possibility of spousal support, while the asset protection strategy I'd implemented proved completely unassailable. She walked away with roughly $15,000 and a severely damaged reputation. As for me, the experience strengthened both my personal resolve and my professional expertise. My consulting firm gained 3 new clients specifically because word had spread about how effectively I'd handled my own situation. The strategies I'd developed and tested in my personal life became new service offerings that proved highly valuable to other clients facing similar threats. My mother, bless her heart, has enjoyed having the additional assets to manage and has already made several strategic improvements to the investment portfolio. Emma moved to another state within a year, apparently unable to handle the social consequences of her actions in our community. Her family maintains minimal contact, still ashamed of her behavior. Jake, according to David's final report, moved on to target another wealthy married woman in a different city, confirming that Emma had simply been his latest mark in an ongoing pattern of financial manipulation. The experience taught me that sometimes the best defense truly is a good offense, especially when you have professional expertise your opponent doesn't expect. Emma's mistake was assuming I was just another trusting husband who could be easily manipulated. Instead, she chose to target someone whose entire career was built around detecting and preventing exactly the kind of scheme she was attempting. Her betrayal was devastating personally, but professionally, it was just another case to be solved with the same methodical approach I'd used hundreds of times before.